Okay, we're still getting a lot more crowd, so welcome to everyone who's joining us. In a minute, we'll start. Well, now I have been informed that Facebook is live as well, so I guess people on Facebook can actually see us. So welcome, shalom everyone, and thank you very much for joining us to this broadcast from ancient city of David, Israel. My name is Shachar. I'll be your host for the next, I would say, 35 minutes, if I may. And this is going to be a short lecture about a great story that took place in the ancient city of Jerusalem about 100 years ago. Let me be a bit more accurate, about 109 years ago, during the summer of, 1911. What you're looking at right now is actually the city of David from south, from an aerial picture took from the south, and we're diving in. I have a lot of pictures for you. By the end of the lecture, as we are very much approaching the Memorial Day for the Holocaust, we will have a short time for a few questions, and then we'll have to close down by 7:45 Israel, Jerusalem time maximum. So we do apologize in advance for the short time, but I'll try to be as entertaining and as interesting as possible. So again, welcome to those joining us fastly. I can see the numbers growing on my bottom screen. And my name is Shachar. We are studying the city of David in the times of the real Indiana Jones. I would say, where does Indiana Jones' story comes from in the city of David? So what we are looking at is an actual mistake that took place for nearly 2,000 years, starting with Josephus. It is hard to believe that the great historian, Josephus Flavius, in the Roman period, had actually made a huge mistake by putting the ancient Jebusite city, which was conquered by King David, according to 2 Samuel chapter 5, he located it at the time at the top of Mount Zion. What you're looking at right now is actually what we know as Dormition Abbey at the top of Mount Zion. This was the mistaken place that pilgrims took for granted as the biblical city of David for nearly 2,000 years. Meaning, if you had opened up Lonely Planet about 1,000 years ago, and you said, take me to the city of David, I'm interested in visiting in the biblical ancient city of David, this is actually where it would lead you to the mistaken site, which is the top of Mount Zion. The reason for that mistake he did was because King Herod's palace at the time was actually there, and he assumed that if King Herod has built his palace on that location, surely great King David must have been on the same site as well. So just to begin with, the city of David is an actually new site. After 2,000 years of a huge mistake for pilgrimage to the wrong site, people have actually understood that the biblical city of David lies somewhere else. You're looking at the southern part of the Temple Mount right now. You can see the Temple Mount from south. You can see the great Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock, which is the golden shrine at the top of the Temple Mount itself. And south of it, what you're looking at is the biblical city of David, which is combined today with the neighborhood that is known as Palestinian Siloam. Now I have circled it for you in a very specific location, in a red circle, that you can actually see it right now, where the ancient biblical city of David was located, south of the hill of the Temple Mount, on what we know as the eastern hill of ancient Jerusalem. If you go back in time, some 3,000 years ago, according to our renovation and reconstructions, this is approximately what you should have seen if you came to the same site, to the same observation point as we've seen from this side, from this picture. If we stood on the same site looking at the city of David at the time, this is probably what we would have seen. As you can see at the top of the picture lies Temple Mount. South, down beneath, lies the temple and, of course, the Ophel. Then you can see Palace of King David, and of course, the rest of the city and the great fortress from the Canaanite period, which is actually surrounding the biblical Gihon spring. If you took a picture at the beginning of the 20th century, my friends, this is what you've actually seen where the village of Siloam is located today. That picture is from the late years of the 19th century. Actually, very, very few houses are built at the top of this. What you can actually see are cabbage and cauliflower which is the local agriculture that was, dwelt by the people of Siloam at the time. This is the reason why nobody was looking for the biblical city of David in that spot, because it surely didn't see like a city. You couldn't have seen any city underneath it until our friends will show up. Let me pay tribute, if I may, 30 seconds, if we may, for Queen Victoria, Her Highness, Her Majesty Queen Victoria, and Captain Charles Warren, which would be the first digger, the first excavator coming to the exploration of the city of David. The time is actually 1867, just 2 years after the PEF was founded. The PEF stands for Palestine Exploration Fund, and that fund was actually commemorated by the House of Lords with Queen Victoria herself, and they sent very good and very talented people to Jerusalem to start the story which we're about to discover together, which is, I would say, the basis, inspiration for Indiana Jones. So part of the figure which Indiana Jones is based upon, my friends, it's hard to believe, but this is the gentleman you're looking at right now, which turned to be the chief of the Scotland Yard, trying to capture Jack the Ripper in London after finishing his job in Jerusalem. When he was finishing his job in Jerusalem, after digging a few years in the city of David in the Temple Mount, he was appointed in London to try and capture Jack the Ripper, the famous assassin. Even though he didn't succeed, still he's a great inspiration for us. Our story starts with a unique delegation taking place in 1909. Actually, the story begins a year before that, when a very interesting, and I may say an odd person, a bit weird, by the name of Henrik Juvelius. Again, the name is Henrik Juvelius. He has got a PhD from the
Shaka, it looks like there's an issue with your voice. We can't currently hear you. Okay, just an update here. Shachar has an issue with his internet. He is rejoining the meeting, and we'll be back in 1 minute. Thank you for your patience.
Are we back?
Yes.
Yes, we are. So let me apologize for the internet, my friends. I'm sorry. Just please let me know that you can actually see the picture. We were on the Parker delegation. Are we okay?
Confirmed, yes.
Thank you very much. Apologize. Sorry. We will continue, friends, and this is where we are right now. We are actually talking about the inspiration to the famous story which much talented researchers of Spielberg made a great work, great job when they were researching for the story you're about to share with us, looking for the Holy Ark. But actually, in 1909, that person, whose name was Henry Cuvelius, who was a psychic, not only a PhD in Israeli studies and ancient Jewish archaeology and ancient Jewish history and biblical history, the guy had actually another diploma, which he kept, I would say, very much silent. He was a psychic, a medium. He said he can actually communicate with ghosts. And on a daily basis, or should I say nightly basis, he was communicating with King Solomon and King David, according, of course, to him. And he was learning from them where the Holy Ark should have been kept in the biblical city of David. And that goes for the same as the treasures of King Solomon and the treasures of King David. So when Indiana Jones, I'm talking about the famous movie and the writers of the Lost Ark, was created, actually it was built upon that story from where we are continuing. So let me move on and you'll see. About 155 years ago, the excavation in the biblical city of David started. For 30 years, they have dug the site without understanding that they actually dig the city of David. What am I actually saying right now? It's a bit, frustrating and a bit odd, because they did not understand that the southern hill that they are excavating south of Temple Mount is actually the biblical city of David. They did not know that this is the Gihon spring. They have not understood at the time that they are digging the places which we know as the biblical city of David, including the Hezekiah's tunnel. They considered parts of Jerusalem. Just in 1907, did the first, I would say, comprehension came into materialization that they are digging the biblical city of David. And now comes this amazing delegation of Parker, and they're doing a huge work in the biblical city of David, starting in May 1909. In the beginning of the summer of 1909, they land in Jerusalem. They hire 300 local masons and workers, employees from the village of Siloam. They put huge shading nets over the whole area, over the whole hill of the city of David, and they start digging, I would say, quietly and secretly into the heart of this amazing hill of the city of David. The thing is, at the beginning, nobody knows what they do, because they are not exactly archaeologists. We need to understand that the person known to us as Brunello Montague Parker, the head of that delegation, was recruited by Henry Cuvelius, this Finnish doctor from Helsinki. At the time, we have some testimonials, historical testimonials, that actually many lords and counts and all kinds of noble people from all around Europe are standing in line to donate money to this very weird delegation. Why? Because they were selling shares, and they said that whatever they find in Jerusalem, every member who's holding a share of that specific delegation will get a part of the treasures of the ancient Jewish temple and the kingdom of Judea. Beyond that, every lord and every count and every duchess in Europe wanted to own, if possible, of course, the covenant, the Ark of the Covenant. And therefore, Henry Cuvelius has done an amazing job creating a delegation that was built of former officers from the British Army. The first captain, of course, recruited was Brunello Montague Parker. He's from Italian origin. That's the reason for the name. And he's recruiting 60,000 sterlings at the time. This is as if I told you that a delegation would come to Jerusalem today holding suitcases with about $50 million in their hands, money for bribery and money for the workers. 300 employees are recruited from the village of Siloam, and they start digging all around secretly and mysteriously, looking for the Holy Ark and looking for many other things. If you are looking at the left side of the picture right now, you're actually looking at the front page of the New York Times from May 5th, 1911. Just to understand how real the story is, about 110 years ago, in 1911, that delegation was allegedly lost at sea on its way to Cyprus. If you see what says here, it says, gone with treasure that was Solomon's. English party vanishes on a yacht after digging under the Mosque of Omar. Let me remind you that when the newspaper says Mosque of Omar, they actually make a mistake because they intend to talk about Al-Aqsa Mosque, which by mistake is being called here Mosque of Omar. Of course, it's not the Omar Mosque. Allegedly, the delegation has in their pockets, in their hands, the sword of King Solomon, the throne of King Solomon, and the ring which was on his hand. If you ask me, Shachar, why are these three components, these three so impressive and important artifacts? The reason, my friends, is mythological. If you look at Christian mythology is very, very keen about these specific objects. The throne on King David is meant for his wisdom. The sword represents his righteousness because it was supposed to cut the baby in the famous trial into two halves. And the ring represents as a symbol his wealth, because in this ring, he actually signed the treaty with the Queen of Sheba. So allegedly, according to Christian mythology, these three artifacts are representing the wealth, the wisdom, and the righteousness of King Solomon himself. Of course, none of the above is true. But let me remind you this. We have the diary of this famous Brownello Montague Parker. The diary is actually located right now in Hind News 2 Street in London, next to Oxford Street, in a very famous place, which is the archives of the PEF. If you go there and you read in the diary, you see something amazing. Montague Brownello Parker himself admits that he had to flee Jerusalem under rush because he was actually wanted by the Turks due to digging under the Temple Mount. At the time, he's going to Cyprus. Why? Because he's very much afraid of his life. And he's running to Cyprus. And then when he gets to Cyprus at 1911, in May, he says, I have fled from the Turks, leaving behind me my beloved pipe and my beloved chisel and hammer and many tools and my buckets, which we have found in the city of David in an excavation that was conducted in 1997. So actually, Parker left us not only a front page of a newspaper, he actually left us whiskey bottles and beer bottles and all kinds of English materials, which we have later found in the excavations within this place. But let me remind you again, this amazing story taking place in Jerusalem undercover for 2 years in between the summer of 1909 and the summer of 1911 is the actual inspiration of the storytelling, of the script itself for the movie Indiana Jones and the Holy Ark. Now, what actually do we gain from this amazing excavation? Let me please take you on to this journey so we can see some more of these beautiful artifacts found in the biblical city of David. First, we get to understand that the fountain, which was known for many years, the spring itself, which for decades, my friend, for decades was named the Virgin's Fountain or the Fountain of the Virgin, until 1907, in every Jerusalem guidebook, in every story of a voyager or a pilgrim, everybody calls this the Fountain of the Virgin. Now we already know that this is the Gihon Spring, but the whole enterprise of King Hezekiah, the tunnel and the blocking of the spring was recovered due to that amazing PEF work, including the delegation of Parker, which has actually started to dig even under the amazing fortress of Zion, which is my next picture, if I may show you. I want to show you down here, underneath, below, what you see at the bottom of this page is actually what we have researched and found in the biblical city of David after a long excavation taking place from 1995 all the way to 2014. This is actually the Spring Citadel, and the Spring Citadel, which is shown here in these pictures, is mentioned in the great story of Abraham visiting the ancient city of Salem. Salem, as we call it in Hebrew, Shalem, is mentioned in the 14th chapter of the book of Genesis, verse 18, and it is saying specifically that Melchizedek, we know him as Melchizedek. Melchizedek is coming out of his city to the valley nearby, which is named the Valley of Shaveh. The Bible reminds specifically the Valley of Shaveh, and they meet next to that amazing fortress. Imagine yourself that due to the excavation of Parker, we have today the ability to actually walk into this beautiful citadel from the Canaanite period, which is the most preserved citadel from the Canaanite period in the whole land of Israel. This is a 3,800 years old amazing citadel, ancient fortress from the times of the Canaanites, which was taken by King David, as we know it from the story, in 2 Samuel chapter 5. Let me go on because our time is very short and very limited. From that amazing story of Indiana Jones, inspired by Parker, we can show you some more beautiful evidence that is coming from the biblical city of David. The whole book of Jeremiah is actually opens up at the palm of your hand when looking at these amazing impressions. At the top left part, you can see a high rank minister in the kingdom of Hezekiah mentioned in the book of Jeremiah, chapters 35 and 36, in the name of Gedaliah, son of Pashhur. On the right side of the picture, on the upper side, you see another high rank minister from the kingdom of Zedekiah named Yehochal, son of Shelemiah, mentioned in his name, not only in the book of Jeremiah, but his private impression was found in the ashes of the great fire taking place in the destruction of the first temple city of Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar and his soldiers. So we have these two amazing impressions all mentioned in the great story of Jeremiah 34 to 38. But beyond that, we have another one. We have the famous bulla, the famous impression of Gemariah, son of Shaphan, who is actually the author, I would say the supreme author of the king. If you compare it to his rank today, he would be the secretary of the government, the person who writes all the things needed to be done and execute them, all the orders that were taken in each and every meeting in what we know as the courtyard, the Matara courtyard, as it mentioned in the Bible. Another impression which we had the pleasure of finding some 4 years ago is the impression on the left bottom side of the picture, which is named Hezekiah, son of Ahaz, king of Judea, no less than the private name of the king, which we all know from the great story of the book of Isaiah, the book of Chronicles, and the book of Kings, 2 Kings, of course, when the Assyrians are coming to besiege Jerusalem. More evidence that took place in the times of Parker, my friends. Parker was very much keen not only to find the great treasures of the Ark itself and the treasures of Temple Mount, but he was very keen to find the pool of Siloam, which you see right now, which was found back then. The newly amazing street, which parts of the Parker delegation started to go through. You're looking right now at a paved Roman street from the time of King Herod, which is actually leading and connecting the great pool of Siloam to the Temple Mount. There's another beautiful picture of that street, which is being excavated as we speak. It's an ongoing excavation for the, I would say, the next 2.5 to 3 years, and it will be opened fully from Pool of Siloam all the way to the Temple Mount. Some other beautiful findings just before we finish up and have some times for questions, friends, are, of course, one of the beautiful golden bells that surrounded the robe of the high priest at the time. This specific bell is mentioned in the book of Exodus 28. As you can tell here, it was surrounded with 72 golden bells and pomegranates. So it says, and here is one of those bells, which was found in the great excavations along the Roman street leading to from the Pool of Siloam to the Temple Mount. The same goes for many, many, many of those half a shekel coins which we have found. These are minted coins from Tyre, minted from pure silver, which are meant as the annual tax that was brought by every Jewish person at the time and by everyone coming to the Temple Mount at the time. Another beautiful thing that we found within the Canaanite fortress that I just showed you before is a great impression which is known as Bethlehem Impression, proving the existence of the ancient city of Bethlehem in the times of King Hezekiah and in the times of the Great Kingdom. As my time is almost up and we still have to have some questions, let me just sum it up for you, my friends. Actually, we're looking at one of the most, I would say, the first excavations take place in the whole ancient Holy Land of Israel. This amazing excavation would lead for 30 years of excavations of the PEF. On top of those, on those specific excavations, would join that unique delegation of Montague, Baronello Montague Parker, which was recruited by Henrik Juvelius, coming to dig down the city of David, but he was not an archaeologist like the PEF. He was just using the British service in order to get a license to dig in the Turkish times, because he was still digging under Turkish Ottoman Empire. And he was actually looking for the Holy Ark. I know that there are many rumors, and I know that there are huge amounts of information about the Ark going to Babylonia, about the Ark going to Ethiopia, about the Ark going to Yemen. Excuse my French, my friends, but actually these are all, as we call them in the world of scholars, BS, as we have no proof whatsoever, neither documentation nor archaeological findings that would prove to us what actually happened. So the version which was chosen by Indiana Jones, by the movie of Spielberg, is actually the best that I can offer you, that the Ark may lie somewhere today in one of those huge storage houses somewhere. Actually, Parker never reported the findings. So maybe his grandson holds the Holy Ark of the Covenant under his bed back home in England. Actually, we don't know, but we have to be very much certain that this is as far as we know from that. And now we're taking questions, please. I understand that we have questions from Facebook, correct?
Yes.
Temple Mount. So the first question that I will refer to, I'm getting them via Facebook here on my WhatsApp. The first question is meant for the water pumped from Pool of Siloam, or actually from Gihon Spring, that were taken to actually all the way up to Temple Mount. Let me remind you that on the first temple period, there's no water up on Temple Mount, but water cisterns, meaning you need to bring water from down the Gihon Spring by hand force, by men labor, and they're actually taken there to wash all the blood of the slaughtered animals from the sacrificial ceremonials that take place. So correct, we need huge amounts of offerings, we need huge amounts of water, and luckily for us, we have found a huge water cistern right next to Temple Mount, but still you had to pump the water from this specific water. The next questions that I have is 72 golden bells and pomegranates. Does it have anything to do with the 72 virgins of Islamic beliefs? I have no idea, I'm sorry, but this might be a great idea for someone to write his next PhD about what we call unique numbers in Judaism and Islam. What other questions do we have? Do you want to help me, my friend, and ask me this verbally instead of me reading it?
Sure. Let me just open it up. So the next question is from the excavations of Rabbis Goen and Gez. Do you believe the Ark is under the Temple Mount through Warren's Gate?
Well, excuse me for not saying what I believe in, because as a scientist, as a historian, I very much believe documentation and things that I can actually prove and see them. I don't know about any excavations under Temple Mount. I only know about excavations next to Temple Mount, and those were never published. And as they never published, rumors can go very fast and very efficiently. But we, scientists, historians, and archaeologists, we need to see publications from authorities that we can trust. So I'm sorry, I can have no comments on that, as I have no infrastructure to comment upon. There were no publications whatsoever from those excavations, if they ever took place. I'm sorry. Next question, if we have enough time. My City of David host, do we have any questions?
Yes, I don't see any other questions at this point. I also suggest that everyone can write them in the Facebook post, and then we can answer them after the live streaming.
You have my email there, and if anybody wants to ask anything in Facebook, it will be our honor to answer. The City of David is making a huge progress in excavations all around ancient Jerusalem, and this is our privilege, and I should say this is our honor as well. As we are very much close and approaching the Holocaust Memorial Day, let me wish us that this will be a safe and healthy day for us all, to have enough time to remember all our ancestors and all our fathers, mothers, and forefathers from the great Holocaust in Europe, including my family specifically. So I'm going to have the ceremony with the people of Israel here, back in Israel. Thank you very much for joining us, and have a safe and great day.
Thank you so much, Shachar, for being with us.
Thank you.